Hey everybody, it's Effort Adventure with another episode of albums I got recently, where I show albums that I recently picked up within the last month, the last few weeks, the last few days, whatever. The last episode I didn't show off too much, but this episode I have a lot to show off, so it might run a little bit longer than I'd like for it to, but I definitely have a lot of good stuff that I'm sure you'd all like to see, so without further ado, let's get it started. All I really have this time is hip-hop and rock, so I'm going to start off with the hip-hop stuff because I have the least amount of that this time. The first one is If You're Reading This, It's Too Late by Drake. I already reviewed this mixtape / album, so if you haven't seen it already, go check out that review. Anyways, I'm not going to say too much since I've already talked about it, but this mixtape is pretty solid. Nothing really strays too far from what Drake has been doing. Legend, Six Gods, Star 67, You and the Six, Jungle, and 6 PM in New York were my favorite tracks from this project. It has its usual dark, underwater vibe that most Drake projects have, but it's nothing really impressive, so yeah, if you're reading this, it's Too Late by Drake. Next one we have here is 2014 Forest Hills Drive by J. Cole. This album was considered to be the top hip-hop album of last year. Before then, most people really weren't too big on J. Cole, but this album really showed him stepping up his game. Fire Squad, GOMD, Wet Dreams, A Tale of Two Cities, all really great tracks. A solid hip-hop album, and definitely one of the best from last year. Next album is What, the Album by Redman. I'm going to be honest, I haven't listened through this album all the way through yet. The only track I've heard so far was Tonight's the Night, which samples All Night Long by the Mary Jane Girls, and I think I listened to one other track. I was on Spotify checking out some Redman, and I heard that song and really wanted to get this album, and I'll definitely get around to listening to it if all the songs kind of have that soul-influenced vibe to them. Next is Atlians by Outkast, considered one of the best hip-hop albums ever, and a true classic by the classic group Outkast. This album is full of some great music. It has a space theme, hence the title Atlians, and some great tracks like Elevators, Over the Woods, Two Dope Boys in a Cadillac, Wheels of Steel, and so on. Definitely an album I'd recommend checking out. The next album is I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside, an album by Earl Sweatshirt. This album came out this year and is considered one of the top albums of the year by none other than a former member of Tyler the Creator's Odd Future, Earl Sweatshirt. I've really been getting into Earl a lot as of late. I listened through his mixtape Earl a couple of times, and I've checked out some of his stuff from his previous album Doris. I need to listen to all of it all the way through, but this album in particular is incredibly dark, very personal, and very interesting. Huey, Mantra, Faucet, Grief, really every track on here is really great in its own way. My favorite is probably Mantra, but yes, a great album nonetheless. Maybe not for some because it's very weird, but yeah, look forward to a review of this album very soon. The last hip-hop album I have here is Run the Jewels 2 by Run the Jewels. Another album that has been regarded as one of the top hip-hop albums of this year. The second self-titled LP by the group Run the Jewels, composed of Killer Mike and LP, is a stunning project. From beginning to end, this album is ace. I'd say my favorite tracks were Jeopardy, Oh My Darling Don't You Cry, All My Life especially, Lie, Cheat, Steal, and Early. I can't recommend this album enough to you. Definitely check this album out. So with the hip-hop albums out of the way, we're going to move on to the rock section, and the first album I have is 20th Century Masters Grand Funk Railroad, just a cool collection of Grand Funk Railroad hits. It's only 10 tracks though, so it's a rather small collection, but good all the same. Next is Icon Queen. I was appalled by the fact that, as big of a fan of Queen as I am, I had none of their records. And no, this isn't one of their studio albums, but it's still a really cool compilation of their biggest hits. You have your essentials like Radio Gaga, Bohemian Rhapsody, Another One Bites the Dust, Fat Bottom Girls, We Will Rock You, etc. But I think it's missing some essentials like Under Pressure and I Want to Break Free, for example. But I definitely recommend this compilation to you if you're a fan of Queen or want to get into Queen. Next is the last compilation album, and it is Ramones' Greatest Hits, another compilation album containing classics by the Ramones for all your da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na needs. So yeah, Ramones' Greatest Hits. The next album I have here is Nevermind by Nirvana, arguably the first grunge album and a very influential album in general. It really kicked off Nirvana's careers as the grandmasters of grunge and 90s alternative rock. Definitely recommend this album. The next album is Pyromania by Def Leppard. I haven't actually listened to this album yet. I was thinking about getting into Def Leppard and decided to pick this up. I don't know if I'll ever be reviewing it, at least not anytime soon, but I will definitely be listening through it when I get the chance. Next album I got here is American Idiot by Green Day. I've been somewhat interested in getting into pop punk lately, and I figured a good way to start was by checking out one of the most popular bands in the genre, Green Day. I've done some research on this album in particular and found the premise to be rather interesting, as it is a rock opera, so I decided to pick this one up. I haven't listened to it in its entirety yet, but I assure you I will, and will probably be reviewing it at some point too. The next album I have is Highway to Hell, a classic by none other than AC/DC. With their most recent release of Rock or Bust, I figured it would be beneficial to continue collecting AC/DC albums. Before this, all I had was their album Back in Black, so I'll continue to keep collecting. Now here we have something special, and that is Please Please Me by the Beatles. In case you are watching and did not know, this is actually the Beatles' first LP, and even back then, they were still really great. The Beatles, as you may or may not know, is my favorite band of all time, and with this album now in my possession, I only need one more album to have all of their studio albums. That last album is Beatles for Sale, so as soon as I get my hands on that, that'll be the last one. The next album I have here is Endless Wire by The Who. This is one Who album I've actually never heard of until I saw it in the store. What's cool about this particular set is that it comes with 2 discs, but is virtually a 3-disc deal. The first disc is split into 2 sections. The first is the actual Endless Wire LP, while the second half is a mini opera called Wire and Glass. Cool, right? But it gets even better. The second disc is a DVD that has footage of the band set while playing live at Lyon, France. So this was a great deal for all the content it has. We're coming close to the end. The next album is Sometimes I Sit and Think, and Sometimes I Just Sit by Courtney Barnett. One night while I was at my girlfriend's house, I was looking up albums that came out this year and saw this, and it looked interesting enough, so I listened to a few tracks of it on Spotify. I really liked it. I think it was like the next day or 2 days afterwards I picked it up. Courtney Barnett and her group are an indie rock band, and on this album there are tinges of punk and alternative rock. It's somewhat lo-fi, but a great record all the same. The next album is Sound and Color by Alabama Shakes. The first I heard of this album was in a review of it by one of my peers, Joshua Kirk. Go check out his channel. I'll put a link in the description and probably somewhere on the screen here. I think the same night I was listening to Courtney Barnett, I listened to Don't Wanna Fight, and I immediately loved it. Alabama Shakes is a group that does southern rock, but fuses it with R&B, blues rock, and soul for a perfect blend of musical goodness. I definitely recommend you pick this album up. And finally, the last album I have is Currents by Tame Impala. This is the psychedelic rock band Tame Impala's most recent release. As usual, the leader Kevin Parker did all the instruments and production himself. What's interesting about this album, as opposed to the band's last 2 albums, Inner Speaker and Lonerism, this album is much more dance-oriented, as opposed to the former's having more of a psychedelic and alternative rock sound, making this album quite unique. I guess you could compare it to stuff by bands like MGMT, but yeah. Currents by Tame Impala. I'd like to thank you all for watching this video, and to give you an idea of what I'm going to be getting next, hopefully, Before the Money by Joey Badass, Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West, Smoke and Mirrors by Imagine Dragons, Doris by Earl Sweatshirt, Wolf by Tyler the Creator, Art Pop by Lady Gaga, Cowboys from Hell by Pantera, and Beatles for Sale by the Beatles. Hopefully be in my next video of this series, albums I got recently. But again, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and if there's an album or a song that you want to see reviewed that you like or may recommend, just leave a comment down below or hit me with my Facebook or my Twitter. The links are in the description. And also hit that like button if you liked this video. If you saw anything that you liked, to let me know. And also subscribe to show your love and support. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. So long.